all sorted now, and as I say, I'm going to keep my new haircut, my new hairstyle, my dramatic new change. Ooh! Oh, they're such bullies with each other. Um, until tonight, I'm having a Zoom call with all my patrons. I'll be putting up the link shortly if you are a patron and you're watching. I'm going to do this after that, do that after this, and we'll have a nice chat around 6 o'clock. And we'll get to know each other a bit better, you know, which is a nice thing as well. And a bit more intimate. There's a lot more things to say and a lot more things to show. Everybody's trying to bite my hair. My hair doesn't look like hay anymore, but they're still interested in it. And my clothes. So, Ruby is here by my side. Ruby has a collar, which is a good sign. And wait, who are you? Oh, somebody's eating me. No, you see, the thing is, you can't hop up on me now because I only have a vest on, Howard. And your feet would go through me. Everybody's a little bit... Yeah, we went to Tralee yesterday, got my hair cut. Everything was exciting. And it was great. We got a little bit late there. Somebody was supposed to arrive at 12. And it was 2 o'clock by the time they arrived. I know they had to do an errand for me as well, but I thought they'd factor that into the time. But anyway, everybody's here and everybody's kind of nibbly. They all want to nibble on the phone, on me, on my head, on my clothes. But there's plenty of grass. And of course, the big nibbler of them all, Jessie. She's such a little pet. She's such a little pet. So they're all calmed down. All the mothers are sleeping. So next weekend, I'm really hoping to move them around and get them into a new field, and maybe some of them, like Unity, might go up to another field, not in a row now, but Drioch and Druid, all the kids that are kind of weaned now at this stage, you know. It would make it easier. Then you just come down and you'd have your milkers more now. Like, well, you see, Honey and Sooty might move up there with the kids and leave them suckle away. What do you think, Jessie? You'd stay here. You'd stay here, look after everything. So the story this morning is about our local town, Cahersiveen. And I don't know if I've told you this before, but I know I have a recorded video, but not a live video. And again, it would be nicer if you saw my face, but that's waiting. How Cahersiveen got its name. Now, Cahir in Irish is town, and Sive is the name of a girl. So Siveen is a term of endearment, like Shawneen. Some people would call me Shawneen. Oh, stop it at each other. So Sive and Siveen is a nice way of saying Sive as well. So Cahersiveen. So many fado, many years ago, the Ireland was looked after by the Fianna, an army of brave warriors who looked after the country, went around. They were strong and they were clever and they were gorgeous and intelligent. Good morning. Oh, did you see it? You saw it very quickly. I'll have to... the live version always goes to the face first, so you have to swap it around. But we'll have more of a chat about it in the Zoom call later. So... And the Fianna was ran by Finn McCool, and there's loads of lovely stories about Finn McCool as well, from all over Ireland, and in Sean O'Connell's book as well. And who's there behind me? Oh, there's Lamal. So Finn McCool and the Fianna, they loved hanging out around Killarney and this area here as well, because we had the lakes and we had the forests. Now, there was forests all over Ireland, but the forests here were very dense and very full of life. Biodiversity, I suppose, because before then, biodiversity was just like air, I suppose. It was everywhere. They probably didn't even have a name. So they were out hunting one day, and this deer, a female deer, took flight, and all the dogs of the Fianna went after the hare, and then all the men of the Fianna chased the dogs. And by God, the hare went running, and she ran twice, if not 3 times, around around the country of Ireland, and they still couldn't catch her. And after a while, all the dogs were played out except for two. Finn McCool's, called Bran and Scuillón, who President Michael D. Higgins had called his dogs after. Now, they were Finn McCool's nephews. Did you hear that? Pooh. Finn McCool's nephew, because his wife was enchanted into a hound as well, but that's another story. And while she was a hound, she gave birth to two pups, but they were still Finn McCool, they were still considered his nephews. And they were the only dogs chasing the hare, or the deer, and it kept going. And then after a while, all the men were played out and nobody could keep chasing the dogs, only Finn McCool. And when it was just Finn McCool and Bran and Scuillón, the deer stopped. And the hounds, instead of pouncing on the deer and tearing her apart or anything like that, they just sat down by her side. And Finn McCool never saw this before in his life, so he reckoned there was something special. So the dogs, Bran and Scuillón, escorted the deer back to Finn McCool's home, to his enclosure. Now all the Fianna... There's Saoirse. There's Saoirse. So all the dogs and all the hounds and everything, they were all back in Finn McCool's enclosure, and the Fianna, and they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it when they saw the deer being escorted by the two hounds following Finn McCool into the enclosure. And they went into the enclosure, and they were no sooner in there when the deer turned into a beautiful princess. So she explained her name when she was Sive. Here's Margot. Her name was Sive, and she came from this area down here. There's Margot. She's like King Puck. I think I was going to do something last year. We might have Queen Puck this year. We might have a little Queen Puck festival. What do you think? Don't jump on me anyway. Whatever happens, stay up high. So, what do you think, Jessie? Would you be queen? Maybe queen for a day. Yeah. Anyway, she explained that she was from around here, and there was an evil Fomorian prince that wanted her to marry him. And she wouldn't, because she wanted to marry for love. And the evil Fomorian prince turned her into a deer. And the only way that she could turn back to herself was to be in the enclosure of the greatest man of Ireland, Finn McCool. And that's why she took chase, or let the hounds take chase in her, because she kept running and she knew eventually she'd meet up with Finn McCool. And she did. Yeah, we're live, we're doing good. There's Ruby, and there's Bliss. And so she explained anyway, and she could stay in the form of a woman as long as she stayed in Finn McCool's enclosure. And that was all right. And Finn, he fell in love with her, and they got married. And they had a great time, but Finn kind of gave up the Fianna. He kind of gave up running around the country. He didn't like hunting anymore. He was a happily married man. And everything was going great, but the men from the north, the Vikings, were attacking Ireland, and Finn McCool really had to get out there and go to war with them. He had to defend Ireland. So if he did, he made sure that the wife was to stay inside the enclosure. Sive was to stay inside the enclosure. He told all the servants and everything. He left Bran and Scuillón there and everything. And she did, because she wanted to live her life with Finn McCool in the enclosure. She was happy out. And that was fine. Time went on, and she missed him. Oh, she missed him so much. And she couldn't wait. She was looking out at the walls of the enclosure, out onto the land, hoping that she'd see him come home one morning. And one morning, she did. She saw the shape of Finn McCool coming over the mountain, and she got so excited. Bran and Scuillón were still asleep. The servants were only getting ready, getting the fire made up and everything like that. And she ran out of the enclosure, ran towards the shape of Finn McCool coming, but it wasn't Finn McCool. There's Margot up there. It wasn't Finn McCool. It was the evil Fomorian prince that had heard she was there. And he only took the form of Finn McCool. And when he had her on her own, he tapped her with his wand again, and she turned back into a deer and ran off into the distance. Well, the servants now saw what was going on. There's Jessie. There's Jessie. And they ran out, but they had nothing. They couldn't catch her. The deer went off, and your man, the even Fomorial prince, disappeared. and off he went out into the wilderness. Eventually, Finn McCool came home. They told him the story of what happened, that they couldn't stop her. She thought it was Finn McCool, and she was shouting, "Look at Finn, Finn, I'm here." And next thing, it was the Fomorian prince, and he turned her back into a deer. Well, Finn McCool got the Fianna together and they went searching. And they were searching all over Ireland, up, down, back, forth, every little spot they could think of. They were searching to see could they find her in deer form or in woman form. And there was no sound anywhere. But after 12 years, they found a little blonde-haired boy who was living out in the wilds. He couldn't talk. He was kind of dirty and his hair was all matted and everything. And they brought him home to Finn McCool's enclosure. They washed him, they dressed him up, they combed his hair. After a while, then he learned to talk and he was, he got into things. And then he told him his story, that he never had a mother or father. But all he knew, any mothering came from a deer that used to look after him, and he would suckle from the deer. But every so often, a black figure of a man would arrive, and the figure of the man and the deer would have a fight, and he would disappear. But until one day, the man touched the deer with the wand, and she totally disappeared, and so did the man, and that was the end of everything. And he was found then by the Fianna, and then they realised that this was the son of Sive and Finn McCool, and they called him Oisin. And Oisin then grew up to be part of the Fianna. And he worked, he fought and worked and was alongside Finn McCool, his father, for a very long time. But Oisin also became a poet, and he was very well known for his poems and his songs. And oh, look at this fella here, and he's looking for attention. Howard, you're looking for attention. So Oisin grew up. And then one day they were hunting around here again on a mountain, and away in the distance, coming in from the ocean, they could see something coming, and they couldn't make out what it was. But after a while, they could see it was like blue and white, like an aqua blue, different to the sea, and something white, but it was making fierce speed, whatever it was, and it was ploughing along. And next thing, it came in off the sea and travelled straight onto the land without one speck of difference. It travelled the same speed and the same certainty on land as it did on sea. Now, they never saw anything like this before, and it got closer and closer and closer to them until it arrived, and there was Niamh Ciannóir, Niamh of the golden head, and by God, she had a beautiful head of golden hair, and she had a beautiful aqua dress on her, a turquoise dress, and she had a white horse who was called Embar. And Embar is the horse of Monamaclir, and the horse can travel on sea as well as on earth, and he got her there. So Niamh explained her story, that she heard of the beauty of Oisin. She heard of the eloquence of his poetry and all the singing and the talents he had. And she wanted him to marry her and go back to her land of Tír na nÓg, the land of youth. And every day in Tír na nÓg, you never get older. Nobody gets older. Everybody is happy. All your heart's desire is there. There's no paperwork. There's no forms. There's no bureaucracy. There's no department of this or department of that. No government bodies. It is heaven. And the weather is nice as well. It rains by night. And would he come back with her? Oh, he said he would, of course. He'd be delighted. And he bid farewell to his father and the rest of the Fianna. He bid farewell to Ireland, and he headed off. He hopped up in Embar with Niamh, and they headed across the Atlantic out to Tír na nÓg. Well, they had a wonderful time. And Oisin had a fantastic time, never filling out forms, never having to tax the car or the horse or anything, no government bodies down on top of him, and no departments making up rubbish for him. And it was great altogether. And he went on, and after 5 years, he said to Niamh, "Do you know," he said, "I'm having a great time here. Is there any chance I could go home and visit my father, just to have an old hunt around the lakes of Killarney, or back down to my mother's place, Cahir Saiveen, to see what it's like?" And Neve said, don't worry about home. Look, she said, they're all fine and you'll see him soon. And she gave him this lovely drink and he had the drink anyway. And he kind of forgot about home for a while and he was on and he had a great time out in the land of youth and they were going to the seaside and he was hunting over there with his friends as well. But it just wasn't the same as at home in Ireland. So a second time he said to Neve, he said, I'd love to go home after 10 years now. He said, I'd love to go home and just see my dad for a day. It won't be too long. He's getting old now, do you know? It would be nice to see him. And she said, Edda, you go another day. Don't worry about him now here. There's lots to be done here and we're having the Olympics now this year and we have to get ready for that. And she gave him another drink of this nice stuff. And he drank it and he forgot all about Ireland and he all forgot about home. Féachar an pucker buile, tá sé ag tacht. And everything was going great until a third time. He was missing home and he wanted to see Finn McCool and he wanted to see Ireland and the Fianna, how they were doing. And as she said, look, you're all right, we'll have a sup of this. And he said, no, I won't have a sup of this. I want to go home to see Ireland. Well, she knew she was in a Grúchás then. So she said, right, you can take Embar, you can go back across the sea, Ireland, but the one thing you must do for me is not let your foot set foot on Irish soil. Don't set foot on Irish soil. And he said, not at all. No, I won't. And he went off anyway. And he didn't realise, and she couldn't tell him. She had pity on him, but she was also afraid. But 5 years in Tinnanog was like 5,000 years in Ireland. And when he went there and he was looking for the Fianna and Finn McCool, there was no chance. There was some people would say, I heard, and then some fellow was saying, my grandmother used to tell me stories about Finn McCool, and but I don't think they existed. Well, Oisin said they did exist, and they do exist because I'm here to see them. I'm Finn McCool's son. And of course, he was a huge man because Ireland had really changed. There was now fields and drains and gates and wiring, whereas before it was open plains for Oisin, and also the people had got a lot smaller and waker. So he went around Ireland, he had a quick look around. It was a totally different country. There was no sign of the Fianna or Finn McCool. So he said he'd head away home. And just as he was heading home, he met this group of men and they were trying to lift a rock. Now, to the little Irish men of now, 'twas a huge rock. But to Oisin, 'twas only like a bag of flour. And he said, I'll give you a hand now. I'll help you with the rock and I'll throw it out of the field. So they said, oh, that's great and everything. So he leant over the horse. He put his hand under the stone and he gave it one whoosh. Off it went over to the ditch and landed there, and they were going to build a wall then along it to use up the rest of the stones. And this was great, but with the exertion of throwing the stone, didn't Oisin break the strap of the saddle and came down on his bottom on Irish soil. Never mind setting foot, he set bottom. And when Embar saw this, the horse, it geared up its front legs, gave a strong neigh, and off it went back out into the Atlantic, home to Mononmaclir. And Oisin started getting older and older and older and older. And if he did, the men said, Jesus, you know what we'll do? We'll take him to the new monk over there. Patrick is his name. We'll take him over to Patrick. So Oisin went over to Patrick. He was very old now at this stage. And St. Patrick wrote down all the stories of the Fianna, Finn McCool, and everything like that. And he was mad to convert Oisin to Christianity. But Oisin always said, wherever my father and wherever the Fianna are gone, that's where I want to go. And if I got converted, I might end up in heaven, but if they weren't there, it would be a hell to me. And that's the story of Cahir Saiveen. And we also have the Ballachasheen. It's a beautiful road. It's the most Celtic ancient road you could ever travel. There is something so magical about it. And it's from Killarglen, Glenbeigh, down to a lovely place here called Drummond, which is kind of in the centre of Iveragh, and out towards Waterville then. But it really is a magnificent... Now, it's not for the faint-hearted. It can be narrow and there's hills and there's twists and there's turns and everything like that. It isn't the motorway you're on, but up about that. So it is a very beautiful spot. The Ballacasheen and a beautiful road. As I say, Drummond is a lovely place as well. Agus tá an Gaeilge ann, tá an Gaeilge anna láidir. So it's out there. There are 2 stories of the area. And we have Twink here is now eating the hairs on my arm. And she's, I don't know what you're doing, Twink. Is it kind of a waxing service? So that is our day. As I say, there was lots going on yesterday, and there's a little bit more these next couple of weeks, trying to get sorted and proposals and all kinds of things. But life is good. Life is very good. Do you know when the sun shines and now Twink, don't be eating the clothes. Oh, see, this is it. This is my first time ever seeing goats eating clothes. They're kind of, I don't know, is it just, I suppose, a test? And I suppose after a while then, because all my goats get a bit of grain, a bit of oats and a bit of barley and a bit of this and a bit of that, they forget about the clothes. They know what good food is, don't you, Twink? That's it. So they don't bother with the clothes. Everybody is nice and sleepy here today. I'm sure there was something I was going to say. Look at Howard now, or is that, no, that's Lamal. Oh, soaking up the rays. It is really beautiful. There's a few clouds in the sky, but they're permissible. They're permissible clouds. They are lovely. So again, if you're a patron, we'll have a Zoom meeting. I'm going to put up the link now. Hopefully I can work that out. And we'll have a call later around 6 p.m. We can have a good chat and get to know each other a little bit better and become a community, which would be nice as well. And there's lots more about what happened today and what's happening during the week. So I'll be chatting to you about that. And maybe looking for advice and stuff as well, which would be great. Slán and ish gachtainna, go raibh maith agaibh ar fad. Thank you ever so much. Yarn and the Barn should be back next Saturday, but things are so busy, so crazy, I will let you know. And I can't let any chances, how would I put this now? If there's a good chance of something happening, I need to do that rather than Yarn the Barn, which can go on a Sunday or a different day. Slán and ish, go raibh maith agaibh ar fad. Thank you ever so much. Bye bye now.